So basically there are so many species in the world, but humans, the superior of all, create guilds to hire adventurers to kill other creatures like lizards, dragons, elves, and goblins. For their survival, of course. After completing the mission they will get money and fame in return, which sounds like a win-win deal. A young priestess joins the Adventurers Guild. There are certain levels in guild, like the highest one is platinum, second is gold, and then comes the porcelain. The guild's representative assigns her the lowest rank, porcelain. Of course she's new, what else can she expect? She gets approached by a group of new adventurers who are also at the same rank. They are looking for a healer and ask her for help in clearing out a nearby cave of goblins. The receptionist tries to hold them back as she thinks that there are too many goblins living together in that cave. But a boy interrupts her, saying that they have no time as goblins are kidnapping so many girls from the village, and that goblins are usually considered low-level monsters because it's a common belief that they are brainless. Who needs brains for brutality after all? They reach the cave where the priestess shows her concerns that they must come here with a strategy. But the same boy tells her that it's nothing to worry about. Goblins are like kids, and how he single-handedly frightens them once. After some time, the group quickly realizes that they have underestimated the goblins. They get stuck in a narrow passage due to the goblins' cunning tricks and brute force tactics. So encountering brainless goblins getting dark and a spooky nightmare for them. Goblins grab and attack the witch, a girl from the warrior group. The priestess tries her healing spell on the witch, but it's useless. The wizard is outnumbered, the warrior's sword is too long for close combat, and the fighter is overwhelmed without backup. Goblins attack the boy, and he's turned down by them. Life lesson number 1: never judge a book by its cover or goblins by their color. The priestess manages to escape the goblin attack, but she's torn between helping her wounded companion or fleeing for her own safety. Luckily, a fully armored adventurer with a short sword and shield arrives just in time to save her. He introduces himself as Goblin Slayer and is very decisive. He believes it's time to fight with some goblins since the wounded companion is beyond saving. The priestess is devastated and decides it's best to stay with Goblin Slayer, who is a platinum tag warrior, and try to be helpful. He shares his extensive knowledge with her of how to deal with goblins. He points out what mistakes they have made and goblins took its advantages. After all, they're not what they look like. Maybe they listen to a podcast on some goblin's influencer channel. While they are clearing out the cave, they discover a small room. In that room, the shaman priestess uses the holy light spell to blind all the goblins. Goblin Slayer takes care of the other goblins in the nest. They find some little children of goblins, and the priestess asks the Goblin Slayer to leave them behind. But he declines her request, saying there's no concept of a good goblin existing in this world. Our Goblin Slayer is slaying. They rescue some kidnapped girls from the cave. Some of them join the temple while others couldn't handle the trauma. After finishing the task, they return to the guild. The next time Goblin Slayer accepts a quest, Priestess walks into the guild wearing the chainmail he suggested she should get. She's ready to slay some goblins. As Priestess is the adventurer, she swears that she can never quit 2 things. Number 1, fighting the evil creatures, and number 2, helping people in need. Life lesson number 2, always help others but do your homework first. In flashback, we can see the past of the Goblin Slayer. Her friend asks him to accompany her on her journey to the city, which he declines. It causes a heated argument in them. Slayer's sister interrupts them, and the girl goes to the city with her uncle. In the present day, Goblin Slayer follows his morning routine, checking the footsteps of goblins in his farm where he lives. After that, he goes with a cowgirl to the town. She has deliveries to make, and he's looking for work at the Adventurers Guild. So our Slayer is actually a little farmer boy. Cowgirl overhears other adventurers making fun of him and talking behind his back. They make fun of his low-quality armor and his habit of only accepting goblin-slaying quests, even though he's a platinum-ranked adventurer. They are surely the people who made others believe that goblins are brainless. Go on, try them. The woman who manages the quests and rewards at the guild. Priestess shows up, and Goblin Slayer tests her knowledge of goblins while Cowgirl watches surprised. Then they go to the counter and ask if there are any quests with goblins. The guild representative girl appreciates Slayer's presence because he takes on jobs that no one else wants. There are some quests, and Goblin Slayer asks if any adventurer is out there on any of these missions. The guild's girl acknowledges it, saying a group of 3 porcelain tag warriors accepts one of the missions and still is not returned back. Yet another group of innocent kids. He decides to take on a goblin settlement in an old fortress, but the priestess suggests helping an inexperienced group that accepted another goblin job because she's afraid they might die. Goblin Slayer refuses to help them, but she decides to join him anyway. To the way of the fortress, Goblin Slayer tells her why he's so focused on killing goblins. When he was a child, goblins attacked his village, and he watched as his sister was killed while he hid under the floor, unable to save her. Cowgirl's parents also died in the attack, so they now live on her uncle's farm. He became obsessed with killing all the goblins because of this traumatic experience. Hearing his story, the priestess felt sorry for Slayer's loss. Yeah, go and take down these ugly little creatures with disgusting shorts. Later, Goblin Slayer and Priestess attack the Goblin Fortress, setting it on fire. She uses her new miracle to block the exits, stopping the goblins from escaping the flames. She agrees with the idea of killing all the goblins but wonders if they need to be so brutal. They rescue the 3 adventurers and return back to their village. Back in the guild representative girl offers her gratitude to Goblin Slayer for saving the lives of the adventurers. Meanwhile, in another city, a bard sings about Goblin Slayer's adventures, catching the attention of some adventurers passing by. They ask him where they can find the hero of his story. A high elf archer, a dwarf shaman, and a lizard man priest walk into the adventurers' guild, searching for someone. Who are they? What they want? Let's find out in the next episode of this amazing Anime Goblin Slayer. In the last episode, we see some creatures looking for someone in the city. They are actually talking about Goblin Slayer, but it takes a few minutes for them to realize it. Goblin Slayer's name got lost in translation. They say his name in their native language which no one understands in the town. Life lesson number 3, whenever you're visiting a foreign land, at least learn some basics of their language too. They reach the guild looking for the Slayer, but same problem here. No one understands what they want. The guild girl is also blank, watching their faces. Right on time, Goblin Slayer and Priestess enter the guild hall. They recognize him and the 3 of them ask him to listen to them. He tells the eager Priestess to wait downstairs for him. Meanwhile, our angry Priestess waits for the Slayer in the hall, where a group of adventurers approaches her and asks her to join their group for the quests as a team. They further add that the Slayer only misuses her abilities and she can't learn anything from him. Suddenly, an extremely beautiful witch joins her and defends the Slayer. Just look at her, she's literally a queen. She asks the priestess to listen to her heart only and decides whatever she feels good from the bottom of her heart instead of partying with other beginners. Priestess is envious of her looks, but she's also impressed by how powerful the witch's personality and magic is. Upstairs, the trio explains their mission to fight the Demon Lord, who is raising an army after being resurrected. They are gathering all the Platinum rank adventurers to step in their army against the Demon Lord. But Goblin Slayer interrupts, saying he's not interested unless there are goblins involved. Here comes our life lesson number 4. Always set your priorities straight, always. Luckily, goblin activity is also increasing, so that's why they come to find him. The little green creatures are the army's expendable soldiers, and when they mention this, he takes the job and is prepared to go with them. The priestess asks him about the job, but Goblin Slayer tells her not to. She is irritated because he didn't talk to her before deciding, with or without her input. You're a porcelain-level girl, and he's on the levels day higher than yours, who wants your input after all. She goes with him that night. The 5 of them make a camp and talk about why they are adventurers. They share stories they heard about where goblins came from. Goblin Slayer entertains them with a story his sister told him, saying that the small goblins came from the green moon. Strange, but who knows, they can come from every possible place. They're the freaking rats after all. The next morning, the group arrives at the Goblin Cave, where they see 2 goblins and a dog-like creature guard at the entrance. Elf makes the passage clear for all others just by using a single arrow, and they start moving towards the cave. Goblin Slayer makes sure the goblins are no longer a threat and begins covering Elf and Priestess in their blood. He tells the others to do the same so that the goblins can't smell their scent. In the cave, they encounter so many traps. Slayer notices that there's no goblin flag in the cave, which means that the goblins are led by someone else. They go into the underground place and reach a point where the path splits in 2. The dwarf says that the tracks show their hideout is on the left, but the Goblin Slayer takes them to the right. There, they discover and save an elven prisoner. The lizard priest summons a truth warrior and asks him to take the prisoner back to the village, while the Slayer fights deals with goblins hidden in that area. They promise to seek revenge for her and defeat all the goblins. Then, they find a map, following which they return the way they came from and continue down the left corridor, which leads to a big circular hall. While some goblins were sleeping on the floor to avoid making noise, they used spells to make other goblins fall asleep. They started getting rid of the goblins quietly. Suddenly, they heard heavy footsteps in the hall, and an ogre appeared at the doorway. Goblin Slayer realized that it wasn't a goblin, and make fun of him, which makes him furious, and he uses his fire attack on them. Time for another quick life lesson: never make fun of anyone, especially when they're 5 times taller than your size. The priestess quickly cast a protective spell to block the ogre's fireball attack, saving the whole group. They immediately sprang into action and began attacking the ogre. However, the ogre turned out to be a tough opponent. All of them fight with Ogre, who is the general of the Demon Lord. To their surprise, Ogre wounds heals in no seconds. The priestess helped the Goblin Slayer recover after he was thrown away like a bug. He then pulled out a scroll from his back, and in an instant, the ogre lost its limbs, and the floor was flooded with seawater. This happened because of the magic scroll. When they walk out the cave, they see some elves standing to receive them. They take them to the village. The archer is not happy because adventuring should be enjoyable, but this wasn't. She says she wants to take them on a better adventure one day. The Slayer goes back to the farm where the cowgirl is anxiously waiting for him. A few days later, Goblin Slayer and cowgirl go into town to sell her uncle's produce. The elf, dwarf, and lizard man meet him and suggest exploring more ruins, which he says he will consider, much to their surprise. At the moment, two new adventurers are fighting with giant rats. The boy turns down one, but his weapon remains in his body. The girl takes care of the other, while many bugs approach to attack them, and they run from there, leaving their weapons behind. They get no reward, as the mission deems to be incomplete, so they start searching for a new weapon. They receive a special candle from the guild hall member, none other than our charming witch. It's a special candle that burns hotter as you get closer to what you're looking for. Goblin Slayer is also at the guild hall. He drops off some of his gear at the blacksmith's shop for repairs. He's also in search of a new scroll to replace the one he used against an ogre. The blacksmith tells him that he will keep an eye out for a replacement scroll, but doesn't think he'll find one anytime soon. Meanwhile, back at the guild hall, the two rookie adventurers asked for advice. The guild girl suggests that they should approach Goblin Slayer for help. Since they don't have any money to buy a new weapon, Goblin Slayer advises them to find a club. He believes it should be relatively easy for them to obtain one, at least until they can recover their lost sword. Will they be able to get their weapons back? What do you think will occur next? If you'd like to learn more about the intriguing twists in the story, please drop a comment and stay tuned for the upcoming parts. Till then, enjoy other exciting videos on our channel.